had a goal of making cute clothing. 15 years ago when I started, women started to come together around this message of sort of freedom, because I think that's what the clothing offered them, was a little bit of freedom. And freedom takes different forms.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 144 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I am really excited you are joining me, and thank you for trusting me to spend your time and just using this podcast as something you enjoy listening to and learning from. I really appreciate you. Now, last week we shared my live show in New York with Meb Keflezighi, Jenny Simpson, and Rachel Pratt, who is the New York Roadrunners Youth Development. We talked about youth development. We talked about how to kind of grow the future of tomorrow. And it was just a fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed it. It was very different. And it was interesting to hear both Jenny and Meb's thoughts on this, as, you know, that's not typically something they're asked about. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you didn't listen to it yet, I should say, not if you didn't listen. If you didn't listen to it yet, go back and listen right now and you will go enjoy that episode. Now, on Monday, we had another episode of our Beyond Running series. We tackled suicide with Shelley Gordon, whose husband unfortunately took his life a few years ago. It was an emotional episode, but really worth a lesson. I learned a lot. And I think you did too, if you did listen to those. These Beyond Running episodes I'm doing over this 8-week stretch are all on really important topics that can be crushing to those working through it. And I'm not just doing these because I feel, self-righteous that I should be doing these. I'm doing these because I get your emails and they are from people that are so upset, just having such a hard time dealing with some kind of problem. And I feel like I can't do enough to help. So I want to get in some experts, because if one of you is emailing me, or 5 or 10 or 15 of you are emailing me, there are certainly a lot more out there. So I hope these episodes are helpful and interesting for you, and you are learning how to, delicately handle these situations and what you can do to be supportive if you're not even going through it yourself, but you may know someone who is going through it. Shelley was really brave on Monday to share her story. And as this is something kind of coming up more and more in this world, I suggest you take a listen if you haven't already. Now, today I'm excited to bring to you Nicole DeBoom, who is the founder and CEO of Skirt Sports. She's a former professional triathlete, and she also hosts a podcast as well. Nicole is very into female empowerment, which I love, and I think it's really important, but she's also much more than one thing. This woman saw a problem with something in her world, figured out a way to fix it all on her own, and has a pretty impressive story to go with it. And that's in addition to what she's been able to do as a mother as well. Skirt Sports turns 15 years old this year, so it's a pretty big year for her. Now, remember, if you want the show notes for these episodes, send me an email, tina@tinamuir.com, and I will email them to you every Friday, so you don't have to keep remembering to go check out the show notes. Before we go meet Nicole, I just want to thank Body Health, MetPro, and TurboTrack.me for sponsoring this episode. Thank you to Body Health for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. And for those of you who are deep in marathon training, feeling exhausted every day, those long runs are kicking your butt. I don't know why, for me, the time on your feet ones were always the ones that were 10 times worse than the faster ones. That's what I found anyway. I would prepare myself for 3 to 4 days with absolute dead legs after those longest time on my feet runs. But you know what helped me recover quicker though? Body Health Perfect Amino. My body turned itself back around much faster during all my hard workouts and long runs when I was taking 5 to 10 Perfect Amino tablets daily. And I would usually take them immediately after my run. That way I could burst in the door, fall on the ground tired for a few minutes. Or am I the only one that did that? Get myself up, go gulp down some water with my Perfect Amino, and then do some stretching, rolling, or even take a shower if I was feeling lazy. Shouldn't say lazy. If I was feeling like the shower was the most important, should I say. And then I could have my meal and get on with my day. It works well. And for you, if you are in that slog, they have a 100% money back guarantee. So really, there's nothing to lose. You can get 10% off at tinamuir.com/aminos. That will take you to the Body Health site where you can learn more and get yourself some. Use code TINAMUIR10 to get 10% off your order. That's TINAMUIR.com/AMINOS. Use code TINAMUIR10 for 10% off. Do your body a favor this tough part of the training season and give it some support with Perfect Amino. Nicole, thank you so much for joining me on the Running for Real podcast. I am really excited. We finally are doing this after months of going back and forth. Maybe, I think you said a year. Maybe it's been that long, but we finally got this going. So thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, it always feels like a year. It might only be a month, but a lot happens in both of our worlds. So I'm glad we connected.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a lot of fun. And actually, as I was kind of reading about you in more detail, I realized I think a lot of, not just a lot of your story kind of resonates with mine, but just a lot of the way you've progressed as a person. The words you used kind of felt very, very similar to me. And I think a lot of people listening are really going to enjoy learning about you. But for those who don't know, you are the founder of Skirt Sports, which I'm sure most people have heard of, and we're going to talk about that later. But you started with a pretty impressive career as a teenager, qualifying for the Olympic trials in the 100-meter breaststroke, which is the best stroke, by the way. Not to make that really hard to say, but that was always my favorite as well. So tell us about that. Like, were there indicators early on? Our parents always like to claim that, my parents always said, she loved to run around as a kid. I'm like, yeah, every child loves to run around as a child. So were there any indicators as a child that you had this promise of some kind of sporting ability?
Oh, yeah, for sure. In fact, I actually was thrown into every sport when I was a kid because I have an older sister. And I think parents often do that because when one kid's doing something, they need the other kid to get into it as well. Or else they're shuttling people to two different sports and doing a lot of babysitting.
So what are the examples of those sports?
Well, the very first one is the one that you just referenced, which was swimming. Mm-hmm. So I joined year-round club swim team when I was 5 years old.
Okay.
So by the time I was 5, I was already going to year-round swim practices. And it wasn't like it was intense when you're 5 years old. I mean, you're literally out there having fun, shivering, whatever it is. And I wasn't a standout swimmer from the first moment I got in the pool, but I experienced the concept of consistency early on and definitely the following in the sisters' footsteps. So that was one of the big ones because a lot of sports too, they divide you up by age and my sister is 2 years older. So at least with swimming, you could go at the same time.
I see. That makes sense. And what are some other sports that were in there at the same time?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I did soccer, I did t-ball, I did basketball, I did all this stuff. I did running. Running was a sport where I excelled really young, actually. I was one of those kids that was kind of like a string bean, like that super skinny type. It actually took me a really long time to kind of fill out. And I didn't get my period till I was 16, so I kind of just still was that skinny body all the way through, halfway through high school. And with running, it was just super natural.
Did you enjoy all of these sports?
No, I didn't enjoy all of them. Okay. No.
Just did them.
I enjoyed the sports that I was the best at. Okay. I mean, I don't know if that's normal.
I think that's definitely normal, yeah.
I mean, I did enjoy soccer, but I was the kid who could run really fast to get the ball. Yes. It wasn't like I was really good at kicking it. It's just that I could run fast.
Yep.
But yeah, I did enjoy running and I did enjoy swimming. And I remember in 6th grade, in junior high, running was one of the sports where you could join the varsity. You could actually be on a team. And so I came out for cross country as a 6th grader. And that, I think, is where my athletic promise truly showed its head for the first time.
Okay. Well, and even early on, if you were good at swimming, good at running, that kind of goes kind of into my next question, which was about how triathlon came into the picture. But before I move on from that, I recently had David Epstein on the podcast. I'm not sure if you've listened to that one, but he talked a lot about how important it is for children to do, or any of us really, to do a variety of things, to not specialize too much and hone in on one thing, because actually those who do a variety of things will eventually overtake the ones who have been specializing in most cases. Obviously, there's people like Tiger Woods who are kind of one in a million. But and by the way, for anyone listening, and I don't know if you know this, Nicole, but he was like learning how to swing a golf club. I read this in Range, David Epstein's book, by age 3.
It's very young.
Just crazy. But anyway, so he talked about this, and you are great proof of this. What are your thoughts on that topic as someone with a young girl?
The idea that we need to jump into all kinds of sports.
Yeah, not like, nowadays we see a lot of people who, like someone like you showing promise in a sport. Well, you're going to focus 100% on that sport. It isn't really like, or in a lot of cases, people, when someone does show promise, that's all it is, not what you did.
That's true. I think doing a variety of sports until I knew I was really, really good at one sport, I think it helped me a ton. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, it's really interesting. When I had my breakthrough in swimming, I was 16, qualified for the Olympic trials, like out of the blue, all of a sudden, like this girl, she's got it going on. And I had been running track, but at that time when I qualified for trials, it was like, you should just stop everything else because you have a shot at being one of the best in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I quit everything else. Mm. And looking back, I wish I hadn't. It's always easy now to look back and think that. And part of it is I got better, but it was never as fun. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get that much better. Yeah. And having the balance of other activities, both physically and emotionally, I think it's really important. And especially for any parents out there who are raising young kids who are showing promise, like, don't stop all the other stuff because they've got a lifetime to pursue it. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it as like a lifetime approach, I think you might make different decisions than if you're looking at it as like, what can I do next year? I don't care if I burn out and I'm done forever in 1 year, then that's a different decision to make.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for explaining that. And thank you for your honesty there. That not everyone would have admitted that they were wrong there and admitted that they wish they would have made a different decision. So thank you for doing that. But you did end up as a professional triathlete. I want to skip a little bit ahead in time because there's so many things I want to talk to you about. But ended up marrying Tim, who was also a pro athlete, becoming this serious power couple in the triathlon world. I would love to hear, how did you two keep the relationship healthy when there was two of you who were trying to put your careers first? Because myself, having been at the elite level, you have to live a very selfish life. And put your sport ahead of everything else, especially if you're doing triathlon, which has 3 sport areas in it. So was there any struggle between you trying to kind of whose was more important, essentially?
There's always been a struggle. Yeah. It's ongoing. I mean, it's a healthy tension, I think. I've always thought it was like a travesty that our marriage, like our careers, couldn't be on the same track at the same time. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a good thing. So the way Tim's sort of triathlon career went was like up, and then he won the Hawaii Ironman twice in a row. And then he started to go down the bell curve. And when he was going down the bell curve, I won my first Ironman and started skirt sports. Mm-hmm. And so he was sort of like going down while I was going up. And that took 10 years to deal with. And what's really hard is when you are changing your identity in a sense throughout a relationship as well. And that happens when you have a career or when you have a child or when you add a new like title to your life and how you define yourself, right? Mm-hmm. You know all about that. Mm-hmm. And so we barely scrape by. I mean, communication is number one, most important. And we've had periods where, you know how it is? I feel like sometimes it's hardest to talk to the person you love most about hard things. It's easier to talk to your friends about these things, but it's hard to face them. And like put out there how you're feeling. And the more that you don't do that, the more a little chasm will start to break. And suddenly one day you realize like he's over there and I'm over here. And you've got to work harder then to get it back together.
So true.
So I think I guess to your original question, making sure that you take the time to prioritize each other and to connect in the way that maybe brought you together in the first place. And once you lose that, if there isn't something that takes its place, it becomes harder and harder to maintain a healthy relationship.
This podcast is sponsored by TurboTrack.me. TurboTrack.me is an amazing platform that offers live, streamed, and on-demand workout videos from a wide variety of professional instructors. Now, I've loved looking at it for the stretching, meditation, their strength training classes, and the instructors are highly qualified and you can interact with them after the class, which is pretty cool and makes you feel like you're involved in something, even if you can't go to a gym or you don't have a gym near you. It is wonderful. They also have this incredible tracking system within the app that integrates with several wearable heart rate devices, if that is something you enjoy. I know many of you are huge heart rate buffs, so this will definitely be for you. The app tracks heart rate, resting heart rate, calories, intensity, distance, heart rate zones, and recovery. Add that to the streaming aspect, and it's definitely worth the sign up. TurboTrack.me is offering us a free 90-day trial. That's 3 months. And if you continue beyond the 90 days, you'll receive a free forearm heart rate device. Now, all you need to do is go to TurboTrack.me and use the promo code TINA to get this special offer and stream those great classes. You can track what you do and you will absolutely love it. So once again, that's TINA is the promo code, and go to TurboTrack.me to go get your 3 months for free.
Making sure that you take the time to prioritize each other and to connect in the way that maybe brought you together in the first place. And once you lose that, if there isn't something that takes its place, it becomes harder and harder to maintain a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it definitely does require more effort as time goes by. It's funny, at times with Steve and I have noticed that I remember when we first got married, I was like, we're going to hold hands every day wherever we go, and we're going to just talk, and it doesn't matter what's going to happen because we'll always be just the same that we are now. And yeah, you're right. Like, it's very easy. Particularly, I find, we'll talk at dinner, which is helpful as well. But there's obviously someone else sitting there who demands attention anytime she chooses. But like after my daughter Bailey goes to bed, it's very easy to just be like, you ready to watch TV? Yep. And then sit there in silence. Okay, you ready for bed? Yep. Okay, let's go to bed. And then you just
sound like us. Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah, I know. But I have to remind myself to keep checking in. How was your day? What do you have to tell me? Like, all the things that are meaningful and important to that person in their day, remembering to ask that. And it's not so easy to do as you think of it, especially like you said, when you are adding more things to your plate, more titles, more demands, which is kind of a part of maturing, a part of growing older. You're gonna take on more roles in your life. So thank you for talking about that, because I think that is something we've never discussed on this show, but it is an important point, and it's good that you and I can both admit that we do have to work hard to kind of maintain a relationship, or otherwise you kind of end up as roommates. And I've seen so many couples who just kind of live like roommates, and it kind of makes me sad. And I just have to work really hard to not get to that point. And like you said, if that does happen, it can be done. It can be undone, I should say, but you have to work even harder. So thank you. All right. So when you were a pro triathlete, you said on your website, you knew in your heart that something else was waiting for you. For someone listening, how would you ever have known that? I totally get what you're saying, because I felt the same way. But what was it that told you that during that time in your life?
I think it goes all the way back to when I graduated from college and I was aimless. I actually had gone to Yale University. I was an Ivy League graduate, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. And the only thing I really knew how to do was be an athlete. And I started to, I think, have a little depression, which is an unusual feeling for me. I'm not a person who suffers from depression. But my mom at that stage in my life said, I think you should go talk to a counselor. And so I did. And she reassured me, like, this is normal. You have no purpose right now. You don't know what you're doing. You're feeling a little bit despondent. So I'm going to encourage you to step back and do an exercise where you write down all the times in your life that you felt the most alive, like when you felt the happiest, and just write them down. It doesn't matter what they are, just free flow thought. And then step back and give it some time and look and see if there's a theme or anything that bubbles up. And what bubbled up for me was that I felt happiest when I was physically fit and often when I had a goal. Okay, so a physical athletic goal. And so I thought, well, then I guess no matter what I do in life, I need to save time and energy to allow fitness into my life, right? So here I am, a professional athlete who'd been following that path and had found happiness through that sport. But then after a while, I started to recognize that the happiness wasn't the same and that I was lacking a greater purpose. And so I did that exercise again later on in my racing career, like right before I started Skirt Sports. And I realized what was missing was community. In that racing as a triathlete is a very like solo endeavor. And I did watch very closely what it takes to be the best in the world because my husband was. I was a great triathlete, but I never won the world championships. And it's full sacrifice. Yes. Everything else goes by the wayside. I mean, there's no way we could have had a kid then. There's zero possibility. So, I mean, not just that, our marriage, everything. It was like our whole world was focused around him winning, even though I was a great athlete too. It was like, boom, that's what it took. And I didn't have that in me to push to that level for that purpose. And I craved community and support and being able to share my journey with people. So that was kind of like part of that gut feeling in your gut when you know life is about to change. And you're like, something's going to happen. Something's going to change. I don't know what it is, but I know this won't be my path for the long term.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely get that. Weirdly enough, what you just said right there, I just sent out, this is going to give my listeners away to when we're recording this, but I literally an hour ago just sent out an email saying, I'd say like 80% of the words you just used there were part of that email. Like crazy. Like I'm going to send it to you after we finish talking, but like that's just the weirdest thing hearing you say about that I sent that to my email newsletter. So weird. So we're definitely on the same thought there. So then the idea for Skirt Sports came along not long after this kind of thought, this feeling in your heart. When you saw your reflection in a window and didn't like the way that the clothes made you feel. Now, that is a very common thing for a woman and some men to feel when they maybe see their reflection in running clothes, which are traditionally tight, traditionally made of materials that are figure hugging and maybe sweaty. So you're already feeling a bit self-conscious. But you didn't kind of just want to, have a side hustle here. You saw this as an opportunity to turn the market upside down and do something completely different. So, why go for a running skirt and what gave you the confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to go big here and I'm going to really change things around?
It feels like it was this all at once decision, but really it came in steps. I mean, it's like any marathon. You're going aid station to aid station. There's going to be a finish line somewhere, but you can't start thinking about mile 26. So you're like, okay, what's mile 1? What's mile 2? What's mile 3? Hold for me, right? And I had this idea, yes, that I wanted to take what was out there, which was basically performance clothing kind of made for men with a few tweaks and nothing cute. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I thought, why is no one doing this? You either have cute surf apparel or tennis wear, because the Williams sisters were rocking it, right? But there was nothing for endurance athletes that fit well and fit women's bodies. That was the first thing, and was cute and performed. Performance was the base layer, right? So I just started learning. Like when I had that idea.
Was skirt the idea? Like a running skirt was the idea?
No, the idea was a line of women's clothing that you look and feel good wearing. That was the phrase. Okay. But then as like a month went by and I started to think about it and I wrote down these ideas for different products, I was talking to Tim and he was like, like starting a whole line of women's clothing, that seems like a lot. Like you don't even know what you're doing at all yet. So every great brand generally starts with one thing. Mm-hmm. So what from that list is unique and different and really epitomizes this idea of like helping lift your spirits while you're out there? And there was only one product because pretty much most products have been done and nobody had ever made a running skirt. And I was like, I want to try this.
Were you looking at the Williams sisters? Like when you kind of got that idea? You mentioned them already. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was like, there's tennis skirts, there's golf skirts, there's a couple of cycling skirts, but they were like about really covering you and not about celebrating, being a woman. And that was, so I just went out there. There were swim skirts too. Again, all about.
Really?
Yeah.
But that must slow you down. Like, I was going to say, how does that not performance?
Yeah. So nobody had like really solved this problem that I actually was having when I was running in shorts too, because they kept chafing me and I would spend a lot of time pulling the shorts out from between my legs and they were bothering me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what if I could free up that energy and create something that's really cute? It looks good, but it's kind of sexy. But part of that appeal is that it's actually covering you. So you're not showing more skin, you're showing less skin. Mm-hmm. But then in my head, I was like, but are people going to think you can't be a serious athlete if you wear this product? Yeah. So then I was testing and training and just having some fun in these prototypes that I had made. And I decided to wear one for the 2004 Ironman Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And that kind of sealed the deal because I won that race wearing a skirt, and I proved that you can be a really awesome athlete and rock a skirt as well.
And so did you feel any extra, I don't want to say motivation, but did any part of you feel for that race you had an extra gear because you knew if you didn't do well in that race, then people would maybe be commenting on the skirt and like, what's she wearing, rather than that you were a great athlete? Like, did you feel that you kind of had to prove yourself in that race?
It's interesting. I actually never thought about it that way. I only thought about it in the reverse. I didn't think about the, what if I don't do well, what will they say? I just thought about what if I do well, they're going to notice. Mm-hmm. And it was a secret weapon. Like I was in a swimsuit for the marathon run at the end of the 2.4 mile swim and the 112 mile bike, and so I was running in a swimsuit and I just put this little skirt over it and I fashioned it like a race belt, but with a skirt attached to it. And so it's really a funny style. If you go to our store in Boulder, you'll see it in a shadow box on the wall. It's literally hanging there, but it was like a loincloth. Like the legs were open kind of on the sides and it was an over flappy kind of piece with a pocket in the back. And I put a couple gels in there and but it was so cool because it got really hot. And you know how when you're running, one of the worst things you can do is pour water on your head because it feels great for like 5 seconds. It's instant gratification, right? And then it just goes straight through your clothes and ends up right in your shoes. And then they're heavy and squishy and making that horrible sound. And so, but it did get hot. And so the last maybe 5K, 10K of the run, I started dumping the water on my head. And I was like, I know it's going to be temporary, but I really want it. And that's part of my personality. I give into instant gratification a lot, but it like went through my swimsuit. And then when it got to the skirt, it like went along the hem and it just sort of swished and splashed along the hem and it never quite made it into my shoes. And I was like, this is like a magic cooling mechanism. I mean, it was like emotionally and physically, it was an amazing turning point for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And really cool to hear that. And I don't know if you know this, but the last race I won, last serious race I won, I wore a tutu at Disney World. Did you see that photo?
I did.
Yeah,
and
so I'm all
it.
about that. And that was kind of one of those, the same kind of thing of like, I didn't expect to win or didn't really care if I won or not, but I did the same kind of thing as you. I wanted to prove a point. Like, you can have fun, you can, you don't have to take life so seriously. And, you can be a bit different and go out there and do it. So definitely feel your heart there as well. So, after that, I guess before we go on, the aspect of kind of people say like snickering, like, haha, it's a skirt, that, can't be a serious athlete and things like that. How have you kind of overcome that? Was that race in itself enough to kind of give you the street cred essentially, or have you kind of been battling that? And how have you done that, like as a person, particularly as someone who is in the limelight yourself?
It's interesting because at first I think I didn't realize how polarizing this one piece of clothing would be.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought people would be psyched for more options. Like, you can do something different. And then we got like almost like hate mail. Like, why should you tell me I have to try to look cute? That kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm not telling you have to try to look cute. That's up to you to decide what helps you feel best and perform best, right? So it was a little bit surprising to get negative feedback, but mostly we got positive feedback. Mm-hmm. And mostly it was from women I didn't expect. And I think these are some of the big wake up moments in business. We have preconceived notion of who's going to be our customer, who's going to listen to your podcast, who's going to embrace your philosophy. And often we think maybe they're a person just like us, but sometimes they're not. And I thought it might be more performance athletes who were looking for something cute and fun to supplement, their training and racing. But what I found was it was a much greater range of women who didn't have a lot of options to wear, and larger sizes for sure. Women who wanted more coverage for sure. And that was totally different than what I thought who I thought would gravitate to my message. So for me, it was more about shifting my mind to include everybody who wanted to be a part of it instead of trying to chase down who I thought was going to be a part of it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
How did you, just being someone who's competitive, it's wonderful that you had this different category that were then interested, and maybe seeing that as a bonus. But how did you competitively let go of not chasing down these peers of yours? Because I'm assuming you were, saying to people you were competing against or people you knew, like, hey, wear this. And some of them maybe were like, I don't know. Like, how did you handle that emotionally and mentally with that competitiveness in you, that it wasn't really going to the market you thought it would?
Well, it's interesting because the very first time I tried to like argue back or explain or encourage someone to change their mind, I realized that they didn't want to change their mind. They just wanted to tell me why they didn't like what I was doing. And I realized pretty quickly that that was a big waste of energy and emotional energy and time. And that if I could just keep going where the doors were opening, that was the best strategy. So, as a competitive person, I think like we're always seeking the most efficient way, right? As a swimmer, you want to take 14 strokes the length, not 18 or whatever it is, because the more energy you can save, the more you can perform well. So, I think it's all been just really, truly at the end of the day about listening to my gut. And whenever I make decisions that are maybe 100% on money or 100% on trying to be cool or whatever it is, like those generally don't end up being the best decisions. And you're the only person who knows your life and your business or your family or whatever decisions you're making. And so you got to come back to what you're really thinking and not trying to rely too much on what other people say you should do.
And what would be your advice for someone who's trying to work through that and does find that quite hard?
I would maybe say it's like if they're an athlete, they will know this line. When you bonk for the first time, you don't know it's coming. You just suddenly are running and then you're like stopped. You can't go another step. But when you start to analyze and go back and look at the signs of what led you there, you'll realize, oh, I was getting kind of cranky and I had that little weird thing in my calf or, whatever it is. Same kind of thing applies to business or other big decisions. Like there are physical signs that are telling us that we may not be making the decision that's aligned with who we are. Mm-hmm. You just have to really get in tune with your body and listen to your body. It's a hard thing. There's not a perfect black and white answer to how to listen to your gut. It takes practice.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hopefully people can, I don't know, like you said, I don't even know if there's something you can say to someone to embrace that more. It just has to be something, like you said, you either have a hard lesson that makes you learn that, or you just slowly start picking up on it. And everyone has their own signs, don't they? We all have our own kind of physical tells, so it's starting to understand you. And it's an interesting one, but I know that is something that a lot of people are trying to work through. So I guess we'll keep trying to think of ways to make people pay attention as much as we can. This may help, actually, thinking about it. Now, you told me when we were kind of emailing back and forth that you see Skirt Sports as an empowerment brand, and the clothing, you've said, is a side effect. What does that mean?
It's interesting when you go into a project for me, I had a goal of making cute clothing. That's what happened 15 years ago when I started. What ended up happening was that women started to come together around this message of sort of freedom, because I think that's what the clothing offered them, was a little bit of freedom. And freedom takes different forms. And then I started to realize that these women are actually connecting and making friendships and finding support from each other. And yes, they love the clothing. Like they go like kids in a candy store when new things are launched or whatever. And that's awesome. And we need that because that's what keeps us like physically in business. But if we didn't have the community, Skirt Sports wouldn't exist. We would just be another clothing company. And there are 10,000 clothing companies and many of them make amazing clothing. And so I'm just so grateful that women saw what I was doing and kind of flocked to it early on, and that we were able to grow this community from basically the beginning. So yeah, that's kind of a broad answer, but it's absolutely incredible to see the friendships and the connections that have been made through Skirt Sports. Women connecting all over the country, meeting up at races, talking through problems with their children on our Facebook groups, all kinds of stuff. And we try to feature them when we can too, because it's about sharing the love.
Uh-huh. So this is primarily going on your Facebook group where people meet each other, or is it kind of a case of someone being at a race and saying, hey, you're wearing a Skirt Sport? Like, how does most of this community come together?
I think it's both ways. We have a huge ambassador program. And my decision on the ambassador program a few years ago was that I was tired of turning people away. Mm-hmm. We used to only accept, a small amount of people. And I remember one year I was writing the rejection email for applying to be an ambassador because you love our message. And I thought, this sucks.
Why did you feel the need to do that at that time?
Right. I mean, I wanted to be the most inclusive company and stop turning people away. So I finally said, let's just take everybody who applies who's real. I mean, they can't just be in it for only for a discount or a fake account or something like that. They have to be real people. I don't care what their following is. They could have 5 friends. We'll be a connector for them. So we started taking more people. And so we've got about 1,500 ambassadors now. And and that layer of our community does connect through private Facebook groups and regional groups and all kinds of stuff. We have a retreat where they come together in person. It's really cool. But then beyond that, it's truly through social media, which is, I think, where you really can connect with people these days the best. Mm-hmm. It's hard to connect with people through email or other ways. So yeah, social media, we put out topics, we show real people's stories, we show the struggles and the real and the celebrations, and people, they jump on or they don't, but hopefully they feel a little less alone in this world.
Mm-hmm. That is great. Thank you so much for being one of those people who is bringing people together and giving them that place to find the friendships, the community, the belonging that we all want so badly. And why do you think, in your opinion, girls and women need to be empowered? And why do we need this empowerment brand beyond just the community aspect?
Well, it's hard because, like, I hate singling out girls and women because I think everybody needs to be empowered. But I do think that girls and women historically have had more obstacles we've had to push through. So, and I'm raising a daughter, and I definitely want her to be a strong young woman someday, you know?
Yeah.
It's also interesting in business. People often ask me, like, how does it feel to be a woman in business? What issues have you been through? And I don't have any gender examples.
Yeah, me neither. Uh-huh.
None.
Yeah.
But somebody did say to me, you may not have experienced the woman's bias or whatever, prejudice or, anything that's related to being a woman, because you might be getting away with athlete privilege. You know how there's like white privilege and whatever privilege is kind of the new one to talk about. And I thought that might be, but I don't see any problem with that, because what athlete privilege is me having worked hard my whole life and developing a level of confidence that's exactly what I think the key to success is. And that's what I want to develop in my daughter is confidence. So
yes.
It's a broad but full circle conversation here.
I think so. Thank you so much for saying that. Okay. And then, so moving forward just a bit more, you had skirt sports, you're getting older as a triathlete to the point to where you're no longer at your peak. How easy was the transition from athlete to retired athlete, or just I say, like business owner, CEO? How did that go? Like, was it as easy as it should be because you had something else to focus on, or did you still struggle?
I did not struggle, and I was lucky. And I think what happened is I had a new passion, and it organically came. Like, I watched my husband go through the other scenario, which is 10 years of not finding a new passion and stumbling and fumbling and losing self-confidence. And the tough thing about being an athlete at that level is that you're making money off of what your body can do. And there is going to come a time when it can't do it at the same level. And I actually think that I probably quit racing right around my prime. I mean, I probably had more good years, but I was done. And I was wholly consumed by learning in a different way. My mind was just cracked open. Just every day, it's all I could think about. And it is interesting because I continued racing in 2005 when I actually sold the first skirts was at an expo in February of 2005. It was at the Austin Freescale Marathon. And we went there and just rocked it and had a blast. And I was still sort of training. And I remember going to races, and I still performed well for like 6 months. It was like muscle memory. Something was hanging on, but there was a race. It was 8 months later after I had launched the company. And it was the worst race of my career. It was the first time I was out of the money. I was like basically shuffling in at the end. I think I was 12th place in a race. I was in the top 3 for years and years. And I just finished, and I was like, I'm done. And I don't care. It's totally cool. I'm on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. So I think it's tough. Everybody has their own path. I mean, what I do next could be tough, like after skirt sports, because I don't know what's going to happen with skirt sports. I don't have a new passion. So I don't know if I'll have as seamless a transition for the next thing in life, but I don't know. I guess I just got to trust my gut and go with it.
Yeah. Well, it seems to have taken you to a good place so far. So keep relying on that gut. And, you say you transitioned, you handled it well. And it's so nice hearing you say that, because I think that is something important, that we do find something else that does bring us joy, especially if it's something that we kind of don't have much control over, like being an athlete. But there's other things as well. Maybe your career, the job that you're choosing, or the job that someone listening to is doing is being phased out, being replaced by computers, and you need to find something else. There's plenty of examples, but it's good to hear that you saying that there are other passions, you can find other things and be happy. So just kind of, keep trusting that gut. That seems to be the theme of our episode here. But that being said, around age 35, you decided to become sober. So with this all going on, how was alcohol coming into the picture during, your pro years, after this, when you were just running skirt sports? What was going on there?
Yeah, it's a tough topic because a lot of people have issues that stem from when we're really young, and mine was no different. I started drinking when I was in 8th grade, and a lot of people look at high-level athletes and they think like, oh, that can't be a problem for them because they're so focused on their bodies and their performance. And this clearly doesn't help your body do better when you consume too much drugs or alcohol or whatever it is. But for me, I think it's that when I was a kid, I was a really high performer. And I was very intense in everything I did. And with that, I just really craved the outlet. And I was never a drinker who could just have a drink and be a social drinker and have fun. I mean, I just went overboard just like I did with everything else in my life. Mm-hmm. And what happened is, my alcohol issues really reared their ugly heads whenever I was in states of flux or parts of my life weren't going so well. So if, as I got older, when I didn't enjoy my job or I just was being too good for too long and then I needed the outlet, or when my marriage was struggling, and that happened a lot on and off over the years. And I would just need to go out and let loose. And
so you would go out. This wouldn't be in your house. You would go out partying.
I would go out and party and do shots and drink. And I blacked out drinking all the time. I was a blackout drinker. I would wake up and be like, what happened? I mean, it's horrible to say that stuff out loud. Like being public about it was one of the best things I did because it really releases a lot of the things that bring us shame, they're tough to carry. I mean, they come out when we're on long runs, remember that boyfriend in whatever year? And you're like, oh, why did I do that? It's like, that stuff is tough. And when you finally release it and you let it go, it frees up some space inside of you to sort of accept and heal and move on. But what's also such an incredible surprise to me is how supportive other people are, and a constant reminder of the fact that I'm not alone, because so many other people reach out saying, I have the same issue. That was my story. Your story's my story. And it did make me feel so much better. And for me, really what happened is I was really unhappy in my marriage. And I've talked about this on stage. It's in video somewhere, and Tim and I were really on the cusp, and I was ready to walk out the door. And Tim just, finally said, like, if we're to really see if this can work, if we can try to get ourselves back together, I need you to stop drinking. And I said I would, because being the athlete I am, I also didn't want to look back many years later and think I didn't try hard enough. Sometimes all it takes is just, maybe you're not connected yet, but it's one little thing to help you put your foot back in the door. Yep. And so I did. I stopped, and I didn't go to a treatment center. I stopped on my own, but it was hard. And I think one of the hardest things is that we give ourselves identities throughout the course of our lives. And one of the identities I had given myself was party girl. And being a party girl, super fun girl, meant being a drinker. And drinking was part of my identity. And I was really scared that I was nervous about if I would still be fun. if I didn't have alcohol in my life, if I wasn't putting down shots and letting loose and being loud and being an idiot, you know? And it turned out I was still fun. It just took a while to like step back from how I defined fun.
Yeah, no, I absolutely get you. And actually, although I wouldn't say I took it as maybe as far as you did at points, I specifically remember being in my final few years at high school, and remember in England you can drink age 18, so people start a bit earlier. But I remember being in my senior year, I was going out all the time, three times a week. With my friends, I was still trying to race on the weekends, wasn't particularly going well. And I decided that I was going to stop drinking and I was just going to go out. But then, and that, you know, I thought, oh, that's fine. It doesn't matter about the sleep so much, whatever. Which, okay, that was still wrong. But I thought when my friends were like, oh, why aren't you drinking? To prove myself, to show, look at me, I'm still out. I would drink like 2 or 3 Red Bulls. And I wouldn't sleep for like 48 hours, maybe. Like I was just wired. And now I look back on that, I was like the same kind of thing. I was trying to prove like I may not be drinking, but look what I can do instead. Like, and actually that was probably worse for my body because it just, I don't even know what I was doing to my body by drinking that much Red Bull. And so, yeah, it's a lot of it comes down to, yeah, like you said, this identity. And thank you for sharing that and you know, getting this stigma out there because you mentioned shame, and I'm sure you have heard of Brene Brown, and she said, you know, the one thing shame hates is to be talked about, to be kind of spoken about. It likes to keep that kind of gremlin inside of you and quiet and festering away. So thank you for speaking out about it, because you're also helping a lot of other people, I'm sure, who are listening to this. So thank you for that. So you're now 47, if you're okay with me saying this, but you do have it around. So I think I'm okay.
Hey, we can't hide that either. I mean, if you could wear all your things on a piece of paper, 47, sober, vegan, like she must be the most boring person in the world, right? You know, blah, blah, blah. Put it all out there. Why not?
That's good. Absolutely. You know, I'm for that as well. You have your beautiful daughter, Wilder. So when you think about the future, I've been thinking about this a lot as well, having a daughter. How has thinking about Wilder and this world she's going to grow up in changed you and changed the way you view this world?
It's demoralizing sometimes. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest. I mean, I'm not happy about the way our country is moving at the moment. I feel like we're going backwards in a lot of ways. And I know this isn't a political podcast and we all have our own beliefs, but I want my daughter to live a happy life, and I want our world to be here, you know, and I think there's not much is being done on both sides of that. I mean, we've got mental health issues. We've got way too much gun violence. Our climate change is killing us. We don't even really know what that means. So it's like very demoralizing. So when you step back and you think about all those big problems, and I mean, there's so many, we can't even get our arms around all of them. It would paralyze us. So what I do is I try to be as positive as I can, as often as I can. And whenever I have a negative thought, I let itself wash over me. And then I try to shift it and turn it and try to create something good out of it, because I don't think it's helpful for my daughter for me to be walking around in a funk. And stuff happens every day. Yeah. I mean, in all parts of our lives, big picture and small. And I often think it's how I handle these tough moments that she's going to see and possibly remember, or at least hit her subconscious, you know, more than the big grand sweeping awards we win and things like that.
Absolutely. And if you hear people talking, like I've talked about this so much lately, but I'm listening to Melinda Gates' book. I've almost finished it on Audible, Women Who Lift, and it's so good. And I would encourage anyone listening to read it. It's not what I expected. A lot of it talks about, access to contraception, family planning, like agriculture, just all kinds of things, how women are treated around the world. And parts of it have made me like be running along listening to this and just scream out like, oh my God, or like feel like I'm going to throw up because I just can't believe what I'm hearing. But there's so many things in there that she says that are making me just kind of feel good about the things that people are doing and what we are being able to change. And same thing you mentioned with Wilder, but we need to do our part in showing them positivity and being able to be a good role model to them, and hearing people like Melinda Gates or very successful women talk a lot of the time, or even men too, when they talk about their childhood, they mention very ordinary moments that they remember. They don't, like you said, say about, I remember my mum walking up on stage in front of 10,000 people. They say, I remember my mum sitting with me, after she was exhausted after work or something like that. So I think you're exactly right that those ordinary moments are kind of the keys here. And I'm glad you're thinking about that. And it's nice to hear that you feel overwhelmed as someone who people look up to as, the successful businesswoman, the successful mother, athlete. So if you're kind of feeling this, then it's okay that everyone else is as well. And it is scary out there. And then related to that, you have you and Tim, both Tim being the world champion triathlete, you having won the Wisconsin Ironman. How do you make sure Wilder doesn't feel pressure in that way, that she feels like she has to live up to your standards?
That is such a tough line because we've been hypersensitive to this issue, and there's other athlete couples out there who have children, and clearly you're going to have some kind of genetic, gift if you're the child of two people who were high level athletes. So it's what she decides she wants to do with that is the question. And going all the way back to the beginning, remember when you were talking about Tiger Woods, like swinging a club at age 3? Like, I just want her to try everything. I think sports, by the time she's 20, there's going to be a whole new bunch of sports out there that she may be able to experience. She has definitely not shown a lot of love and interest in running and swimming and riding bikes, but she's really good at ninja. And she's rocking rock climbing. And I know nothing about those sports, like zero. And I think it's so cool. And so if she's having fun, that's what I want her to keep doing. What I just want to make sure we do is don't specialize her too early. So, I'm not sure how we're going to navigate that line.
And what about the mental aspect of it? Like, not, because people are going to ask her about it, aren't they? They're going to be like, oh, are you going to be a world champion like your mom and dad? Like,
well, I think this year Tim is getting inducted into the Ironman Hall of Fame. And so we're going to Hawaii during the Ironman in October, and she will be there. And so she kind of already knows what's going on a little bit, but I don't think she quite knows the extent of it. And it'll be interesting. We want her to see that because it's amazing, right? We want her to be able to see and celebrate with her parents and her dad. But at the same time, I don't know what's going to come out of it. And the last thing we want to do is hurt her confidence when my whole goal in this life is to help build her confidence. So, it's like all the way back to the beginning again. You said, what sports did you like? And I said, well, I like the ones I was good at. I don't know a way out of that either. But if she's good at rock climbing, pursue it. There's no parallel to like what you do in rock climbing versus winning an Ironman. There's other things to do in that sport. So,
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Okay, we are just going to answer the final 4 questions here, starting with one piece of advice you'd like to give the listeners for life.
One piece of advice. Okay, so this one would be that you should approach every day like it's the best day of your life. Because it is.
Love that.
Yesterday didn't count. Tomorrow hasn't happened.
So good. Thank you. That's great advice. All right. One person to follow on social media and why?
Who I love is the Mernovator.
I had a feeling that's who you were going to say. Well, you, Ms. need to get her on my show, as I've been trying to lock her in for months now, literally months. And so I'm going to say this on air so that she will listen to this hopefully and come on my show.
Myrna is definitely going to come on your show. I'm going to tell her she has to.
Well, now she does, because you've just told her in front of many thousand people. All right. How do you want to be remembered on this show?
I want to be remembered how I want to be remembered every day, which is a positive light in people's day. If I can bring one little positive piece to their day and lighten it up in some small way, that's how I want to be remembered.
You are absolutely doing it. All right. And finally, a running for real moment.
When you got to go, you got to go.
We all know that one for sure. That's a good one, Nicole. Thank you. All right. So just to wrap up here, I want you to tell the listeners a little bit about your nonprofit Running Start, which is a women's support, women kind of empowerment brand. Tell us a bit about that nonprofit.
Yeah, Running Start was started about 10 years ago under a different name. It was called Kickstart. And it was like a little cause marketing program at Skirt Sports. And what we did is I decided that instead of sponsoring races and paying $500 to put my logo on a shirt, I'd rather sponsor 10 women to do their first 5K and help change their lives. And so I started thinking about this concept, and I was like, there's something here. And we owned a race series at the time. It was called the Skirt Chaser 5K. It's a whole nother conversation. And so we decided, why don't we take this on, this idea of helping women who have barriers to running, women who wouldn't do it on their own, but who know they want to change their lives, and give them the tools that running has given us, to move our lives forward. So what we do with Running Start is we pair these beginner runners with what we call a personal motivator. It's like a mentor. And she holds her hand and she goes through her first ever 12-week training plan, all the ups, downs, wanting to quit, keeping going. And then we get her to her first 5K start and finish line. So it's an awesome program. It's run right now in Colorado only. This year we had over 100 women in the group who all finished their first 5K together with their motivators. It was super empowering. It's an absolutely awesome program. And it's to the core of what I do at Skirt Sports, but more than that, it's at the core of what I want to do in this world as a person.
I love that. I will put a link in the show notes for anyone who wants to go check that out. Where else can people find you, and where can they find Skirt Sports?
All right. Yeah. Come to skirtsports.com. If you're in Boulder or Colorado, come to our store. We have a store on 28th and Pearl Street. And skirtsports.com is just the base for all that good stuff, or on social media at Skirt Sports. And then I've got my own website. It's NicoleDeBoom.com. I do a lot of speaking, and you can read a little more about me. And I do have my own podcast, which you're going to be on. So excited. Yeah, that'll be great.
Thank you. And the name of the podcast for the listeners?
Oh, yes. It's I'm horrible at self-promoting suddenly. It's called Run This World with Nicole DeBoom.
Yep. Okay. And I definitely would recommend people. And what was that?
And Tina Muir.
Yes. I definitely would recommend listening. And if you do go listen before we record this episode, Nicole recently recorded an episode with the one and only Rich Roll, which was rather impressive. And I actually really enjoyed listening to that one recently. So if people are looking for a good... Was that recent? It was a few months ago.
Yeah, it was a couple months ago. Yeah.
No, I remember hearing that one. And that one's quite different because you don't hear him on many podcasts. So I think that's quite a unique one you have there. And there's lots of other names of guests you will recognize and enjoy as well. All right, Nicole, thank you so much for your time, for sharing with us, and just for being a light in this world, as you like to be. We appreciate you, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to MetPro for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. If you couldn't already tell, I am a huge fan of MetPro. I love what they do. I love the people that work for them. And hopefully you are seeing just how wonderful and genuine they are as a company, but also even more so Angelo Poli for giving up his time and answering these questions for us in these episodes. So Angelo, thank you for being here. I'm going to ask you another question today that another audience member has asked me about, which is, they say that they're eating well, they're exercising, they're sleeping, but really struggling with those last few pounds and wondering what they can do to see the results. This is quite a common one that we hear of a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great question. And it actually ties in with the last one we talked about. And that is there are a lot of people out there who are checking the boxes. They're eating clean, they're getting the right recovery, hydration, and they're exercising regularly. And for some people, their body weight just marches right to where it belongs. And for others, it doesn't. And so, first of all, I'll tell you what one of my small pet peeve is. Every once in a while, you'll hear an expert in the industry that's very petite say, I maintain my weight and can eat anything I want because I run X amount of miles every week. So I apologize to the entire community for those comments, because you know what? What the truth is he or she can maintain their weight because they're genetically prone to that. Because I can promise you, to our listener who asked that question, you are not alone. There are people out there that are exercising, they're running, they're eating clean, they're doing everything right, but their body still won't budge. They've plateaued. So if that describes you, then there's a hierarchy of steps we want to take. And the first is we need to know exactly what tools we have left. So the two grandfather tools are manipulating your carbohydrates or manipulating your calories. And then the third exercise-related tool is adjusting, increasing, or changing your exercise and training. So in order to know which one of those levers we have to pull, we have to really get to know what you're currently doing. So by baseline testing, basically looking at what you're currently eating and see how your body responds against that, we can determine if you're going to have the most leverage from manipulating your macronutrients, from adjusting your calorie intake, or from changing something about a training element. Now, I know what you're thinking. What if I've already turned all those levers or dials? If that describes you, then you are where absolutely everyone is at some point that is trying to lose weight, and that is you're at a plateau. It's not a dirty word. It's just a biological response. It does not mean, this is really important, guys, it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It means your metabolism has simply acclimated and got used to your new clean lifestyle. So in order for your body to change or adapt further, we have to change another variable. Sometimes that means we have to pause fat loss and focus on metabolic revving by forcing your metabolism to run quicker and quicker by changing your nutrition, increasing some carbohydrates, turning a few of these levers and dials to rev your metabolism. So that way we can come back to a weight loss cycle, and then there will be enough leverage, enough change to guarantee more weight loss.
Great. Thank you so much for explaining that. And I think that does clear up a lot, especially with the kind of revving up aspect. It kind of may seem counterintuitive. And again, go listen to the episode with Angelo if you want to kind of understand that a bit more. We did talk about that in the episode as well. And I just want to say one more thing before we wrap up this here, and say that, you know, for those of you listening who may be in a similar boat, you may want to lose those last few pounds. Maybe you need to use those last few pounds. And Angelo's given you kind of the answer as to what that needs to involve. But I just want to say you are perfect just as you are. Don't ever feel like you have to look a certain way. I just want to make that very clear. That's really important to me, that you, every one of you listening, just you are who you are. And you know, sometimes that last few pounds isn't going to change who you are. Those who love you are still going to love you no matter what. So bit cheesy there, Angelo, but just wanted to mention that.
I love it.
Thank you so much, Angelo, for answering that question. And those of you listening, go to metpro.co/Tina, and you can find out more about what MetPro is, what MetPro does, how you're going to be able to use this service to do exactly what Angelo just mentioned there. Thank you so much. My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, Or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. What a woman she is. And I love how real she is about all the hard parts too. And I love that her clothes mean so much more than just comfort. They're feminine items to wear. Although, as you heard, that is important, that it is comfortable, but it is so much more than just about the clothes. It's about the empowerment. It's about what she's doing to help others grow and believe in who they are. It's just wonderful. Now, I just want to do a quick reminder. If you want to be on the waitlist for my mental training course, you will need it for guaranteed spots. It's already filling up really fast. We have over 70 people signed up on the waitlist, so do not miss that. Many of you have been telling me you can't wait to get it, and I don't want you to miss out because only the people on the waitlist are guaranteed a sale of the product and be able to get your hands on it for your next training segment. So if you are thinking about getting it, make sure you're at least on the waitlist. That doesn't mean you commit to it. That doesn't mean you 100% have to buy it, but that just is the best way that you can make sure that you have a definite spot. So you can sign up at tinamio.com/mental training. That's all one word, mental training. And you can also find a link in the show notes as well. Now, next week, we have Thabang Madiba, who is one of the stars of ultra trail and mountain running in South Africa. He has an inspiring story, and he's sharing how he is working on his journey to get him and his family out of poverty to change their future through his running. I can't wait to hear what you think. Oh, and if you haven't already subscribed, go do that right now to get those Beyond Running episodes on Mondays. And you can also get the episode with Thabang next week. Until then, have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.